Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. We've got a lot to talk about tonight, and this is our next to last Zoom meeting. So, wow, we've almost made it through the 7 weeks. I wanted to start off tonight first with just, I don't know if it's an announcement or just an update, but I cannot for the life of me figure out why the discussion forum for this week is not working. When I log in, it looks fine. I've reloaded it 2 or 3 times. Obviously, I was able to post to it, but apparently I'm the only one who can. So I know y'all are going to be heartbroken about this, but I'm just going to say give everybody a pass on the discussion forum for week 5, so you don't have to do it. I'll send out an announcement, and I'll remove it from class, from Moodle after class tonight. That way you can spend your time focusing on your big assignment, which is the planning for an effective PLC. So anybody have huge concerns or terribly upset if I reduce your assignments by 1? Yeah, Melissa, I know it's heartbreaking. Okay. Yeah, I see Margie over there applauding. So yeah, I get the feeling we're all okay with doing that. And quite frankly, too, there's so much going on here right now. We're going through lots of transition and change, and hopefully I can really kind of share more of that with y'all next week. Like one less thing for me to grade and respond to. So it's a win-win the way I see it. Well, tonight I want to talk to you guys about a couple of things, and I don't know how in depth I'm going to go into the PowerPoint tonight, because you guys can read, and there's a lot of it that's kind of self-explanatory. Hang on, my computer's been really wonky today. I do not know what is wrong with it. See? So, like I said, if things look really weird, just, holler at me. Okay, but before we get into that tonight,
excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tracy, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
apparently I had you muted. What is it that we're cutting out? I missed all of that. I don't know.
We are not doing the discussion forum for this week. I'll take it down after class tonight, and then I'll send an announcement out through the news forum. Okay? So.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions about any other assignments or anything that's going on that, just for the good of the group before we kind of dive in tonight?
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, had you finished grading the assignments for last week?
No, I have not.
Okay. Because I emailed you to let you know I was having problems or whatever, and you said if you hadn't gotten to them by Tuesday. So I was just wondering, but thank you. You answered my question.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, it's been insanity here at LSUS. I mean, good insanity with programs, and like I said, some pretty major changes that are happening at the university, which are awesome, but it's just kind of sucked the time out of my days here lately and my nights. So hopefully we'll get back on track next week. Any other questions, guys? Okay, well, tonight we're going to talk about, I'm going to share my screen here, so bear with me one quick second. We're going to be talking about PLCs and really kind of tying all of this together. Now, I hope I don't embarrass her, but I did ask her permission. So one of our students, Caitlin, if you don't know who Caitlin is, Caitlin Hamilton. Caitlin, you want to wave at everybody so they can see who you are. For her assignment last week, she submitted to me a video. And in the video, she went through and answered the questions and stuff, that were in the assignment. It was probably one of the very best synopsis of professional learning communities I have ever seen. And that includes all the stuff that I've seen by the DeFores and by Eaker and all these other gurus. Caitlin did a really exemplary job of kind of tying it all together. So I'm going to post that in week 6 for you guys. I hope you'll take the time to to look at it. It's about 10 to 12 minutes long. But the thing I liked about it is I think you could probably pretty easily download it. And Caitlin said she'd share with me the Google link. And if you are just starting PLCs, or if you are struggling with them maybe at your school, or you've got some teachers who don't have buy-in, this is a great short video that kind of encapsulates everything we've been talking about. So why PLCs are important, what kind of an impact can they have? What should you be doing during a PLC? So again, really an exemplar for what we've been talking about. So I just wanted to recognize Caitlin because she did a really outstanding job. And as I try to do whenever possible, when students give me exemplary work, I steal it and share it on into the future. So thank you again, Caitlin, for allowing me to do that. So let's kind of talk about, and like I told you, my computer is being wonky today. There it goes. Oh, no, it didn't. It went too far. Okay, hang on. Sorry. It is just absolutely not liking me at all. Don't want to see that there. Go away. Okay, try this one more time. There we go. Okay, so we have been, delving further and further and deeper into professional learning communities. And by now you probably can all relate and give me all the great things, why we need PLCs, what they do, how they can be used, what kind of an impact that they can be. But I wanted to also just dive a little deeper into what really should be happening, not only in a professional learning community, but within a school, particularly as you think about either maintaining incredibly high standards and high achievement or improving your school to reach the levels that you want it to be at. So again, this is a really old quote. I mean, it's 21 years old now. But remember that the real reason that we do the work that we do is that we need to improve our people so that we can improve our schools. I had a superintendent who I think really kind of hit it on the head. He used to talk to us all the time about, as principals, our job was not to take care of the students. Our job was to take care of the teachers. And if we took care of our teachers, they would take care of the students. And I think he was really, really right about that. So many times, when I was interviewing principal candidates and stuff, I'd hear them say, I'm like, what's the most important thing you do? Like, oh, take care of the students. No, you really need to take care of your teachers, because when we take care of and we invest in the people that are a part of our school, that's when we begin to get real improvement and success. Also, too, I think we have to be reminded that there is a difference between discussion and discourse. So I'd like to hear from you guys. What do you think is the difference between discussion versus discourse? Thoughts or ideas?
On my end, I think discussion is everybody just giving their insight on what's going on. Like right now we're talking about annotating, so everybody's just discussing on what they think. But I think discourse is a learning. It's more, discourse just reminds me of the classroom. When I talk about discourse with my students, it's them going back and forth, asking each other questions and finding out answers. Where discussions, I don't think in what I have been through, that discussions aren't me asking, it's just you telling me what you think and all of that. Where discourse, I think it's a back and forth thing, and you question and you answer and you ask to go further in with what you're learning from someone else. That's how I feel.
Okay, excellent. Great synopsis.
I would agree. I feel like discourse is more of a debate, where like discussion is just like a meeting of like minds and just casual talk. Like we can discuss, my favorite color is blue, my favorite color is black, but discourse is like, politics, or how do you feel about education and the systematic mantles inside. Like discourse is, I feel like, a higher level of a discussion.
Excellent, Ciara. You and Nicole, I think, are both right on the money with that. Any other thoughts or ideas? Which one should we be using in a professional learning community?
Discourse.
Okay, I think a couple of people are chiming in. Go ahead.
I think it's discussion because that's more of a collaborative learning.
Okay. Okay. Other thoughts or ideas?
I agree. I think that when you like get in a discussion, it's more of a give and take. So you can learn more from each other. So I think that in a PLC, it's better to talk to one another and just be open-minded.
Okay.
I think it needs to be a balance in between both.
Okay.
That's just my viewpoint on it.
Okay. You guys are all right. Discussion versus discourse, it's going to depend, quite frankly. What is it that you are doing in that professional learning community at that particular time? There are times when you want to discuss, and it is just that sharing of ideas and thoughts. But there are other times there needs to be discourse, and there needs to be some probing kind of questions, or maybe pushing back just a little bit, or getting someone to really refine and define what it is that they're talking about. So there is a marked difference, and there's a place for both of them in a professional learning community. And you may even go back within the same meeting between the two. I think the problem comes in is when we only discuss and we never move to discourse, or vice versa. We only go through discourse, but we never actually move into true discussion. So the most effective PLCs just go back and forth between the two. And depending on, like I said, what we're talking about, for example, in the realm of instructional effectiveness, that may have to be really a discourse-driven meeting, because you have to be able to ask some deep probing questions. You've got to continue to dive a little bit deeper into that discussion, whereas other things may not necessarily need that. So just food for thought as you think about your PLC and what makes them effective. Oh, there we go. Okay. So again, we're not going to go into a lot of detail with these because, like I said, you guys can read, but I want to remind you that the most effective and the most efficient professional learning communities have these elements in common. We've talked a lot about vision, mission, values, and beliefs. Super, super important. There also has to be a collaborative culture. So it can't be just that the team leader or the department chair or whoever's leading that PLC comes in and here's where we are, here's what we're doing, here's our next plan and steps. That's not what a PLC does. And if that's the way they're happening, you're not going to get much out of them, quite frankly. It truly has to be collaborative. It also has to have collective inquiry. So somebody may come in, and I know this was one of the things that we did in our PLCs was I would come in and I would just say to the group, we've got this problem, and I need you guys to figure it out. And my teachers were awesome. They would do some research, they'd do some, talking, they'd look around, they would find materials and resources. Then they'd bring that all back together. And because we were looking at the problem collectively, we were able to come up with a really great solution because we had multiple routes to be able to solve the problem. It also has to be a supportive environment. And I know that, we've talked about how do you deal with difficult people? What about people who don't buy in or are passive aggressive or whatever? But what I'm talking about when I say supportive environment, it's not just within the PLC. It has to be supported in a broader context. So what I mean by that is, if you've got a PLC that is trying to accomplish some things and, really move on student achievement and provide support and learning for the fellow teachers, if you don't have a campus leader or even central office who supports that professional learning community's work, we run into problems. And support takes on many, many different forms. So it might include making sure you have time, building time into the schedule for that PLC to happen, providing the resources and the materials and the kinds of things that they need to be able to be successful. Oftentimes we give, sort of a verbal approval for a PLC, but we really don't show through actions that they are being supported. An effective PLC should also be action-oriented. You should be taking things away from it that you're going to use and put into place. And then, of course, we have to focus on results. We all know that part. Okay? We've talked also too about how PLCs can benefit people. It does decrease that sense of isolation. I go in my classroom, close my door, and do my thing, and you do yours next door. It does help to bring together a shared commitment as well as a collective responsibility. And a lot of people don't often think about this, but they've done a ton of studies. And in schools that have a really robust professional learning community system, you will have higher teacher morale than in schools that don't. Because as we know, it's much better to work in a team and solve problems collectively than to try to tackle every problem individually. It also benefits our students, and again, we're not going to walk through all this, but one of the surprising benefits is that it actually decreases student absenteeism. You wouldn't think that that would be an outcome, but it really is, because we see this synergy happen with the teachers and teaching and really meeting the needs of our students, and therefore our students want to come to school and actually show up more frequently. So in the assignment, for this week that's due on March the 3rd, you have to walk through the steps to start a PLC. I thought this was just kind of a nice, neat little graphic. So if you're familiar with the 3E lesson model, this is kind of similar to that in that you have to establish, you have to inquire, and you have to evaluate. So pretty simple on the surface. First you have to plan, and that starts with a few interested colleagues. You have to meet, so there has to be regular meetings, goals, and a vision, all of that. You have to collaborate, you have to share, but the piece where most people stop, so most people are pretty good at getting through steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Sometimes 6, but they rarely ever get to 7, which is under the evaluation realm. And that's that they don't share those outcomes across the PLC. So make sure that as we think about this, we are going through the entire cycle, okay? Now, we also know about the critical questions. So here are the original 4 from 1998. What should students know and be able to do? How will we know that they're learning? How do we respond when students do not learn? And how do we respond when students learn more? DeFore updated these back in 2010, and he added what I think is probably one of the most prolific and important questions, which is number 4. How will we extend the learning for students who are already proficient? So I think I may have talked to you guys about that idea of the RTI, little triangle, where as you go down, well, I actually like that triangle, but I turn it upside down. Because if we're doing what we're supposed to do within our classrooms, the top level, tier 1, is good first instruction. And if you're an effective teacher, that's going to happen where 90% of your students are being successful. Then you drop into tier 2, where you're going to have about 6 to 7% who need maybe a reteach or something like that, or maybe some tutoring, peer mentoring, there's a variety of strategies. Then when you get to tier 3 instruction, those are for your students who really need intensive remediation. And that's generally going to be your students who maybe miss some conceptual learnings or maybe have some learning differences, etc. What we forget about is if you think about that triangle with, the widest part at the top and then it narrows into like almost a cone at the bottom, there should be another layer above that. And that is for your students who are gifted and talented or already proficient. We have to provide and extend learning for them. So the true model is you take care of your 90% with good first instruction, you take care of those that need a reteach and additional support, you provide intensive remediation or alternative learning strategies for those students who still are struggling even after those 2 things. But then on top of that, take care of your kids who are your best and your brightest and quickest learners. Because if you don't, these are the kids that oftentimes get left behind. I was thinking about this the other day when I was putting this together. And I remember really vividly when I first became principal at the Magnet High School. And this was a school that, had tons of accolades and, they just thought they were the best thing ever. And the first time I met with the teachers in their PLC, they were talking about their data. And, on the surface, it looked really good. They were above 90% proficiency on every measure, every content area, etc. But once you started really digging deeply into the student data results, there was an interesting phenomenon happening. They were doing a great job of getting our Tier 2 and Tier 3 students up to grade level. So they really were moving students 1, 2, 3 years on the achievement continuum pretty regularly. What they didn't realize they were doing was they were taking those students who came in at the 99th or 98th percentile, and they were literally pulling them down to average. So when a student had been with the school 3 to 4 years, by their 4th year, everybody was average because they weren't taking care of that upper end of students. And they were pretty shocked when I pointed this out. But over time, the more we began to really dive deeply into that data and to dig into this and look at these things, we began to see not only were we keeping our really highly successful students at the top, we were pulling more and more up into that realm. So that is an absolutely essential piece. The other thing too, I just want to remind everybody is just because students are already proficient or maybe they fall in the gifted area with some of these things, does not necessarily equate to grades. I will never forget one of my high school students who was a National Merit Scholar. I mean, this kid was smart. And he was a senior. He had all kinds of scholarship offers. I mean, he could go anywhere, full ride, amazingly smart kid. I had to call him in his senior year and have a long talk with him about why he wasn't going to graduate. Perfect score on the SAT, National Merit Scholar, and he was failing all of his classes. Happens with our gifted kids. So when we talk about students who are already proficient, don't just base it on grades. You've got to really look at their work ethic, what's going on with them, because grades are not always our only or best indicator. So just a reminder on that. Okay, so how do you create those systems that make PLCs work? Well, we've talked a lot about that there has to be a supportive environment, and that's going to include your climate of your schools. How do we feel about being here? You know, when you walk in, do you feel like, oh gosh, this is a great place to be, I'm excited? Or do you walk in and you just kind of feel like, oh, I don't want to be here, and you can tell the students don't either. There has to be structure, and what I mean by that is you can't just do this willy-nilly. There's got to be planning and thought and agendas and all of these other components for this to work successfully. And then, of course, there has to be that culture, which is the way we do things at this school, that is supportive of the PLC. So I can't emphasize enough that you have to have time to meet, a place to meet. There has to be a communication structure. There has to be the necessary resources. Otherwise, you're not building a culture that is supportive of this kind of learning. Okay? Also, too, there has to be collaboration. And one of the things that is absolutely essential to do early on in a PLC is to set norms. So what are the kinds of things that we expect in our PLC that we're all willing to buy into and abide by? So here are some norms that people use with collaborative work. You can set your own. I mean, this is just one kind of an example. Also, as I said too, we have to collaborate. So I like this in particular because I think it's just kind of a nice little almost checklist. So you know, if you're leading that PLC, or even if you're just a member at this point, and it's maybe not going so well, these are some really nice little just memory joggers, I guess. So in stage 1, what are we supposed to do? You know, and then let's share, let's plan, let's create, let's analyze, let's think outside the box, and let's learn from one another. And this is a really nice model to kind of follow. In reading the assignments and stuff as I've been grading, a lot of people, you know, were like, what do we do? Just do the same thing over and over and over? Not necessarily, but you will find that you might get into a rhythm or a cycle where maybe the first week you look at data, the next week you dig a little bit deeper and you start to share ideas and thoughts. Maybe the third week you're planning together. And maybe the fourth week we're going to do our common assessments. And then maybe in week 5 we're going to actually come back and look at some student work samples and dig in even a little bit deeper than that. Maybe in week 6 you're going to really try to be like, okay, let's come up with the best, most effective and creative ways to teach a particular idea or concept. But some people have just a 3-week cycle or a 4-week cycle. Some have a 6. It doesn't matter. It's what works for you guys and is getting you the results. There's not a right or wrong answer. Okay. So again, this is another way that people have created their PLCs. This one was actually done around their core values. So their main 4 ideas were, what are we supposed to teach? That was one area of focus. How do we prioritize and order our instruction? That's another component. How do we know that our students are learning? And then what do we do when they're not learning? So see, this is very much like the 4 essential questions. Just they rearranged or rewrote them to meet their needs. And then you can see the kind of things, that they are doing throughout here in each one of those particular stages. So it may be training, it may be looking at research, it may be developing essential questions, etc. Okay? And that is the end of that. So let me turn off sharing. Stop sharing, there we go. Okay. So, a couple of other things, just some points. Some people have been asking how big a PLC should be. Guys, they can be as small as 3. They can be as large as 15 or 20. I would discourage you from going above about 10. Personally, PLCs, if Tracy were queen of the world, I think the ideal size is between 5 and 8. You get much smaller than that, it's hard for there to be a lot of interflow of ideas. You go above 8 to 10, and there's so many people, it becomes somewhat unmanageable. But I've been a part of PLCs that honestly we had like 30 members, and it worked. It was just a little more challenging and time consuming to get to some critical points than if it had been smaller. Also, people want to know, how often should you meet? Well, again, that's so dependent on factors that you may or may not control. You know, if you are only allowed to meet after school, you might be lucky to get together once a week. You know, some schools, and I would encourage principals or you guys, when you're in the position to make those decisions, to schedule time during the day for teachers to meet. You know, that is probably the most effective and efficient way to do it. And I know, you know, when we really went into PLCs big time in Dallas, we carved out time every other day, 45 minutes every other day for teachers to meet together. It was our PLC time. And that's when we saw this really dramatic improvement in teaching, how effective the teaching was for our students, and most importantly, how well our students were doing on our internal as well as external assessments like state testing, because we really got it rocking. But at the minimum, I would say at least twice a month. You go much further than that, and you're just never going to gain momentum. Okay. So, what other questions or comments or concerns do you guys have?
I have one question, Tracy.
Sure.
For the midterm, where it says like you could do, I think it was like a paper or a video. When you say video, do you mean like a video of ourselves answering the questions?
If that's how you want to do it, yes.
Okay.
Quite honestly, you could do that, or I've had people do like a narrated PowerPoint, those kind of things. But like I said, don't overthink it. It's not as difficult as it may sound.
Okay.
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 I do also want to show you guys. Hang on one second here. Let me turn this on. Hopefully it'll come up. Okay. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Hang on. Where is it? Here it is. Okay. Okay. So I want to walk through with you guys just real quickly as well the assignment for week 5. This is now the only assignment you have, but it's not due until March the 3rd. You are going to be creating a PLC, basically. And you can either think about a PLC you're a part of now, maybe one you've been in the past, or you can just imagine one. It's really up to you. So what you're going to do is you're going to, I may have clicked on the wrong thing here. Let me see if it'll let me open. Sorry, my screen always looks just slightly different than y'all's. Oh, come on, computer. Open. And of course it's not. I said it's been wonky all day. I have no idea what is going on with my computer right now. Y'all don't probably care about graduate policies right this minute, do you? That's my world. Okay, well, we may not be able to look at this. Okay. Sorry. It's not going to open for me because, like I said, my computer is just being ridiculously bad tonight. Anyway, basically, in the assignment, it is a template. Sometimes templates can be wonderful. Sometimes they can be a challenge. Don't get too hung up on if the template doesn't work. It's really all about the questions. So if you need to just, copy and paste the questions and just do it in a regular Word document if you have problems with the template itself. Wait, maybe it's finally opening. Yeah, here we go. Let me enable. Okay, can y'all see that okay? So this is the template, and what you're going to be doing is you're putting together an action plan for a PLC. Now, I always try really hard to make our assignments such that it's something that you could turn around and use right now, tomorrow, next week, next year, whatever. Something practical. I don't want you just to go through an exercise for no reason. So this is a really pretty solid, I would say, template for a plan, and just kind of quickly walk you through a couple of things. So again, if for some reason you cannot get the template to type, it is a Word document. Hopefully it will. This is your opportunity to organize your thoughts, basically. So PLC, this could be one maybe you're in. This could be the English department PLC. It could be the third grade PLC. It could be the administrative leadership team, whatever. He's going to be the leader. It doesn't have to be you. If you're writing about a PLC you're in or one you've been in the past, just give me these names. I probably don't know these people. But also, one of the things that's really helpful in a PLC is to name someone who is your subject matter expert. And this may vary. Like, for example, when I was teaching high school English, we had someone who just loved poetry. She was our poetry expert. So, she always got to do the poetry stuff. Whereas, some others of us, liked contemporary literature, whatever. Okay. Your objective. So what is it that you want to accomplish with this PLC? Okay. And it might be something like by the end of the spring semester, students will be able to write at 90% mastery on third grade level standards, something along those lines. Okay. Then the next one is your current state. So where is PLC? Yeah, go ahead.
Back on the objectives, so it's something that you're going to do over a longer period of time, like for a semester or something?
It can be. It can also be that this is just your plan for the first 3 or 4 PLCs. It's really up to you.
Okay, but it should be kind of very small then, like targeted, very targeted.
Yes. Yeah, ideally, yes. So then, like I said, in current state, tell me where it is currently. It's going to be a new PLC, or it's a PLC we need to refocus, or it's one that's been going on for 3 years, but we're not seeing the student achievement results we want, okay? Demographics, describe your team members, and I'm not talking like, Tracy's 5'8" with blonde hair, that kind of stuff. Just, maybe Tracy is a seasoned teacher, please don't say old, seasoned teacher who's been in the classroom for 28 years teaching 9th grade English. Okay, she's an expert at, but she struggles with. That kind of information that's going to be helpful to you. Okay, so current data. Again, what are the strengths of this group or cohort of individuals? Maybe what are some of their weaknesses? And where are some areas you feel like they could really grow? So for example, maybe, let me think about a PLC that I was a part of. The strengths was we had a lot of motivation, people were highly enthusiastic, people knew and understood instruction, they knew best practices. Some of the weaknesses were that people tended to not really use data effectively, that they really didn't know or understand how to unpack standards. And then what were our opportunities for growth? And really it was to dive deeply into the curriculum and to tie that curriculum to not only our formative and summative assessments in the, within the building, but also to tie that to our state level exams. Okay, kind of get the idea? What are your goals? So this is your opportunity to write some SMART goals. And if you've never done this, there's a million Google SMART goals, and you'll see 1,000 different examples. But SMART stands for, it should be specific, okay? It should be measurable. So, people who say that students will get better at math, that is not a SMART goal. You can't do anything but, throw it at the wall and it won't even stick there. So specific, measurable, it should be attainable, relevant, and time-oriented. So let me see if I can come up with a fairly decent one off the top of my head. Students will be able to add 2-digit numbers with regrouping at 95% accuracy within the next 6 weeks. Okay, was it specific? Yeah, students will be able to, and I should have probably said 3rd grade students will be able to. Was it measurable? Yeah, I gave you a measurement, 95% accurate. Is it attainable? Hopefully, yes. It's in the curriculum. It's part of what they should be studying. And I said within the next 6 weeks. Okay, so like I said, though, if you're kind of struggling with SMART goals, you're welcome to draft a few, send them to me via email, and I'll give you some feedback on them. Okay. Now, calls to action. So what will you do to either start or reform, a current PLC? So for example, number 1 might be, I'm going to ask my team members to do the leadership, profile assessments. We're going to do team building. That's going to happen in the first 2 meetings. Then my 3rd and 4th meeting, we're going to look at our formative assessment results. Meetings 5 and 6, we're going to dive into the curriculum and unpack our standards and try to find trends in terms of where students are not meeting objectives, that kind of stuff. Okay. Now, what benchmarks? How are you going to measure your success? So, for example, if team building, that's probably a little. You're going to just it may be an anecdotal assessment in that everybody participated. We were able to assign roles based on that. But when we're talking about formative assessment, that kind of thing, again, how are you going to know if it's working? So your formative assessment results, if you do a pre-test, post-test, let's say, that, on our pre-test, we only had 25% of our students who scored at a 70 or higher, but by the post-test, we had, 95% of our students scored at 70 or above. So that's a good benchmark for us as we track achievement, okay? This is the one that people kind of get confused about. It's called a pull-through offer. So if you think about tug of war, I guess. Think about you've got 2 groups or 2 people holding a rope and they're pulling it in the opposite direction. And, it basically starts to become a stalemate. Then slowly but surely you begin to see a shift where maybe one person begins to move more to center. So what is a tactic that you could use to keep your PLC motivated? So, for example, one of the things I always did with my PLCs, and it was hokey and stupid, and the first time I did it, I thought, these people are going to think I've lost my mind. So, high school PLC, it was all my department chairs, so all content people, and we had been working really, really, really hard, and we were really making some big strides, lots of accomplishments, but I could tell everybody was getting tired. So, I made these really stupid little wands that, you know, like a princess would carry. And so at our next PLC meeting, we did nothing but recognition. So I literally went around to every single person and, you know, pretended it was a magic wand. And I'm like, you know, Tom, you are the king of, you know, and listed all these great things about Tom and stuff, and then awarded him his little wand. And I'm dealing with high school people. So like I said, I really thought they would think I'd lost my mind. They loved it. Those wands were like up in their classrooms. That's all they could talk about. So my pull-through strategy or offer was that I had to build in fun and motivating activities periodically to keep our focus. So that's all we're talking about. What are you going to do to keep everybody going? Okay. So for example, listing in the process. So what are some things that when you hit the wall and your team is being resistant, or there's people who are being difficult, what are you going to do? Maybe you're going to have to do conflict management. You may have to do peer resolution. You might have to pull in an outside person to help. No right or wrong answer, just kind of think about it. So prospecting mechanism, go back to your love languages. How are you going to show people the kind of praise and affection that they want based on their love language? So for example, for my group, that was people who loved gifts. You know, I would take the time to handwrite them a note to let them know, thank you, I appreciated you, that kind of stuff. Coaching questions. So yeah, if you're not familiar with coaching questions, again, good Google search, but you know, my favorite ones are things like, so what are your thoughts about, fill in the blank, what's the worst thing that can happen, how will you know it's successful, but just again, give a couple of examples of open-ended type questions that's going to pull input from other people. And then the post-event follow-up, how do you communicate afterwards? Okay, are you going to write a synopsis and send out a memo? Are you going to post the minutes? Are you going to do some classroom observations and walkthroughs? Whatever it is that you're going to communicate what happened from that PLC to your members, maybe to your administrators, maybe to other stakeholders, but just think about that communication piece and plan. Then what kind of support do you need in terms of resources or professional development? And what are the things that you need to do or pre-plan? So pretty simple here. For example, you need an agenda. And who's responsible? The team leader. When do you want to do that? Well, we always try to publish our agendas 3 days before the meeting. So it's whatever those kind of pre-planning steps that you need. Are there anything that you need money for? You know, are you going to serve donuts? Or do you need to have copies of, let's say you're a 5th grade teacher and you really want copies of the 4th grade curriculum guides as well as the 5th grade curriculum guides, so that you can do some horizontal as well as vertical planning. So just list those items, the cost, and who will pay for them. So we had a team reading, a PLC meeting room on my campus, and we had data walls. So to, you know, get those, all that stuff printed, and we wanted it in color, et cetera, and get it posted up in the room. It cost $32, and as the principal, I paid for it. So just, you know, those kinds of things. Okay, norms and expectations. Ideally, norms are done in the PLC along with team building, so everybody agrees on them. But list some norms that you personally think would be really important for your PLC to be successful. And then what is your schedule? You don't have to fill all of this out. You know, basically give me 2 to 3 ideas. So, you know, in our first meeting, we're going to do student profiles and data review. And you can see we're going to do that over 2 days. Then the next one might be we're going to do team building. We're going to take True Colors and Compass and Love Languages, and we're going to do that in one meeting. Then we're going to go over the results and talk about the differences in the next meeting, etc. And then the last thing is, tell me how you're going to decide if your PLC was effective or not. Now, if you've written a strong SMART goal up here, objective, pretty much I've already spelled it out. So it might be that we're going to see an increase or improvement in our formative assessment scores using pre-test, post-testing data from our students. Okay. Now, these boxes do all expand. I'm not expecting you to fill them all to capacity. But like I said, really kind of think about it, because once you go through this thought process and do this, I promise you it becomes easier and easier. In fact, we used this to plan our PLCs. We usually planned about 6 weeks out. And like I said, this just really kind of helped us, and we got pretty adept at doing it. Okay. All right, so let me turn off sharing again. So, clear as mud, right? Questions, concerns, comments?
The only question I have is, I know coming up I'm going to be doing PLCs on annotation. It's coming up big time on annotating lessons. And I was wondering if I can do it on that. I know it wouldn't, I wouldn't have student data, but I would have teacher data.
Yeah.
Per se. Okay.
Yeah, Nicole, that's absolutely fine. And if you're in a role or position where you're not directly impacting student data, right. Yeah, absolutely. Use your teacher information and data. Yeah, I've written these when I've had difficult teams and teachers and needed to wrangle them in. So I won't tell you some of my really bad strategies I used, although they were effective. Other questions or concerns? Okay, questions about anything else in the big bad world? Okay, you guys make my life too easy. All right, well, that's everything for tonight. Next week is our last Zoom meeting, and I'll walk you through just kind of some pulling it all together stuff, as well as helping you to prepare for the final, which I don't remember if I've opened it or not. But again, to those of you that emailed me or contacted me and letting me know that the discussion forum for week 5 didn't work, thank you. Because, like I said, I still can't figure out what's wrong. I even had IT people look at it, and they can't figure it out either, because anytime we log in, like I said, I posted with no issue. So I don't know what's going on. But just, yeah, if you have any problems with any more of this stuff, just let me know so I can come up with plan B.
So what did you decide to do on that, the discussion?
I'm just going to eliminate it.
Okay, so our only thing is that the case study, the professional learning community one.
Yes, that's
okay.
The only thing for week 5. And like I said, I'll send an announcement tonight as soon as we are done here, and then I'll also, so that'll be in the news forum, and then I'm just going to go in and delete it out of the course, so you can't even see it anymore. All right. Well, you guys have a great rest of the week, and we will see you next Wednesday. Thanks, y'all.